From missed paychecks to shuttered services, Americans in every corner of the country are feeling the effects of the federal government shutdown. The impacts are showing up in everyday life, at airports, grocery stores, and even classrooms. Let's start with the skies. You've probably heard about the growing chaos at airports. Flight delays and cancellations are piling up as TSA employees and air traffic controllers continue to work without pay. And since the shutdown began, there have been more than 215 air traffic control staffing shortages reported at FAA facilities nationwide, and that's more than 4 times the number reported this time last year. And just yesterday, Transportation Secretary warned that if the FAA determines flights cannot operate safely, well, you can expect more delays and cancellations straight ahead. And it's not just flying that is taking a hit. Transportation projects on the ground could also come to a halt. That's everything from subway repair projects to major roadway construction. Without federal funding, much of that work could be paused indefinitely. Families are also feeling the strain. Many home buyers, for example, are being left in limbo, according to the National Association of Realtors. More than a third of all home buyers rely on federally backed loans. But with the shutdown, applications for programs like USDA loans have stopped entirely, putting countless deals on hold. Food assistance programs are on the line as well. In just 1 week, funding could run out for programs that help nearly 42 million Americans put food on the table. About 1 in 8 Americans rely on SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, better known as food stamps. And nearly 7 million pregnant women, new moms, and young children who usually get help through WIC, Women, Infants, and Children. Those programs, well, without government funding, all of those benefits could vanish. Some education programs that serve some of the nation's neediest preschoolers are also at risk. Head Start programs serving about 6,500 low-income kids are already operating without funding. And the National Head Start Association warns that programs supporting another 59,000 kids could lose funding by next week. Even the courts are feeling the pinch. The judicial branch ran out of full funding on Monday, which could lead to court closures, delayed cases, and widespread disruptions in the federal system. And if you're hoping to spend your weekend exploring a national museum or park, well, you might be out of luck. All Smithsonian museums, including research centers and the National Zoo in the nation's capital, remain closed. The zoo assures that animals are being cared for, but the doors are still shut for the public. And while many national parks are still partially open, access is limited. About 9,000 park employees have been furloughed, leaving many visitor centers unstaffed, bathrooms unattended, and could mean emergency responses are delayed. This shutdown is already the second longest in U.S. history, and with no end in sight, we could see even more disruptions in the days ahead. The impacts look different depending on where you live. Check your state's official website for the latest information on how the U.S. government shutdown could be affecting you. And to zero in even further, nearly a month into the government shutdown, with more than 750,000 federal workers being furloughed, now many of the people in charge of protecting the country's nuclear weapons are off the job. This week, 1,400 employees at the Energy Department's National Nuclear Security Administration received furlough notices, leaving less than 400 people to safeguard the nation's nuclear stockpile. What does it all mean? Let's discuss right now with international security analyst Jim Walsh. He's also a senior research associate at MIT's Security Studies program. Jim, always great to see you. So it sounds alarming, even if you don't know the details and what this all means. So, of course, folks are wondering, including me, just how concerning this should be to everyone.
Well, it is concerning. I mean, the Secretary of Energy said that if this continues, it does represent an increase in risk. Now, you've heard different commenters say different things. Would an enemy attack us at a moment of weakness? Does this weaken deterrence? I really don't think that's what this is about. I think it's about something big, though, and that is the accidents or errors that can be made when you're involved in a very complex system like building and dismantling nuclear weapons. And that's a system that's taken, Fredricka, a lot of hits this year. You'll remember back in February, Doge came in. They fired more than 300 workers. Then they said, oops, sorry, that was a mistake. They attempted to rehire them. There have been lots of retirements. People got, had the budgets cut. Now they're getting furloughed. Then they're not getting paid. Trump said, well, we're not going to pay you back pay. At least he floated that proposal. So I think morale at these agencies, or in particular the Nuclear Security Administration, is low. You have experienced people who are leaving, and you can't make up for that experience by hiring a new worker. Can't do that in a year.
Right.
So I worry that there are going to be mistakes, especially if they have to shut everything down, pack it all away, then unpack it and start up again after the shutdown. The to and the fro, the disruption, the morale, the lack of staff. That's how you get an accident. Well, it's still a small likelihood, but you get, what happens is you get sort of one bad thing happening, and that's okay. You can manage that. But then something else you don't expect. Maybe it's a weather event, maybe it's a crisis. Something else happens. And now it's two things interacting together, and that's when you get big problems. So I don't think the sky is falling, but this is, building and dismantling nuclear weapons is serious business. And we need to be fully staffed and fully up to deal with those challenges.
And it would seem very stressful as well. And you talk about how demoralizing it might be for, a number of staff, those who are furloughed. And then, of course, this is such a specialty. It's not like, transitioning into the private sector is going to be fluid and easy either. So talk to me about what a lot of people who are especially working for the Department of Energy are thinking and feeling about their options, their future near and far.
Well, what happens when organizations are in disarray is that the folks who can move, which tend to be the very talented people, they will find opportunities to land elsewhere. And some large share of them will simply retire. They're just going to say, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I've had it. And they're gone. And then if you have someone with 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience, then you're going to retrain those people. It takes a long time to get that back. They all have to get security clearances. There's all sorts of things that have to happen. And one thing I would underline about this particular situation we're in, again, well, I would say two things. One, it comes in this context of all this other disruption. Like that's been happening since February. So this is added on top of that. And the second thing I would say is we've never done this before. We've had shutdowns. Never have they furloughed the nuclear workers like they are doing right now. And my own view, this is what I tell my spouse anyway, is anytime I do something the first time, I'm probably going to mess it up. So the fact that we've never done this and now we're going to do this about this sensitive thing, that also makes me a little nervous.
Oh my, okay. And then I want to ask you about these 3 Chinese citizens who were reportedly arrested in the country of Georgia for attempting to purchase 2 kilograms of nuclear material, uranium. What's your reaction to this? How frightening, worried, are you and other experts?
Well, I think it's puzzling. I'm not prepared to say I'm worried about it. So you'll remember the Soviet Union crashed. All the Soviet republics were left on their own with all this nuclear material and assets. And in the 90s, in Georgia, in the former Soviet Georgia, they had problems with smuggling and nuclear incidents and civilians stumbling onto things and being exposed to radioactivity. Now, what's curious about this is that it appears in early reporting to be a Chinese criminal enterprise that's buying uranium. And the reason why I say that's curious is there really aren't a lot of things you can do with uranium. You can put it in a power plant as fuel, but they're not buying that much uranium. And you can't make a dirty bomb out of it because, ironically, it's not radioactive in the way you want a substance to be for use in a radiological weapon or a dirty bomb. Really, the main thing you can do is use it for nuclear weapons, right? And so we don't know what the enrichment level of this uranium is. Is it, highly enriched? We don't know what would a criminal gang in China do with that? Would they transfer it to a third party? I guess that's the question that comes in my mind. But I would say we got to tap the brakes on this one until we get a few more details, because often we get in some of these cases, it turns out that it was actually police authorities sort of setting up a trap, and there really wasn't much to it all in the end. But I think we'll know, in the coming weeks whether this is serious. But it is certainly curious, Fredricka. It is a curious event.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was like, curiouser and curiouser. All right, Jim Walsh, thanks so much.